Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Confident Business English. If you are a senior manager and you have to use English a lot at work, it's a really important, pivotal part of your role, but you do lack confidence, perhaps overall or with certain specific areas, this is the podcast for you. My name is Anna. I'm a neurolanguage coach and I work with senior managers every single day to help them reach their goals, have a better career, have a better life, essentially, less stress, less anxiety, more confidence, more action, saying yes to more things. In this episode today, which is part of a series called the Confidence Sessions, I'm going to be continuing what we started last week, which was really breaking down confidence in more detail. This is a series that I'm running until the start of the new season of Confident Business English, which will be on the 16th of September 2026. The reason why I really wanted to focus on this is because, well, look, you invest a lot of your time and money trying to build your confidence. So it's worth trying to understand exactly what it is. It's a fluffy word. It's thrown around a lot. And I think it's really good to break it down. For this episode, as with the previous one, I'm going to be taking points from a book by Ian Robertson called How Confidence Works, The New Science of Self-Belief. It's not a promotion or an ad. I bought it with my own money. It's been on my shelf for many months now, and I've been coming back to it. If you are very interested in that topic, you may wish to read it, but that's entirely up to you. I'd like to continue today with what he breaks down as 4 different types of confidence. And he breaks this down into can happen beliefs and can do beliefs. As we established in the episode last week, confidence makes you do things, take action. Anxiety saps action. It stops you doing things. It holds you back. And you will likely recognize that if you are very anxious with the language and with English, you will not take up as many opportunities potentially, or you won't speak up as much. You won't say yes to the networking event. Whereas if you feel more confident, you're more likely to say, okay, I'll give it a go. I don't think that necessarily means you think it's going to go perfectly, but as we established last time, confidence is almost a prediction machine. So you're looking at what you've done before and you're saying, well, the chances of me being successful are strong. It might be a little bit challenging, but I can do it. So you go to that conference, you do that keynote speech, you speak up in the meeting, you take the opportunities. So he breaks it down into 4 different types of confidence. And this is coming back to what I mentioned last time about confidence being a bridge into the future. And to get across the bridge, what he argues is that you need a combination of a can-do belief and a can-happen belief. And I'm going to break it down for you here. You might recognize yourself actually in some of these quadrants. The first quadrant then is can't do it, can't happen. And what this leads to is paralysis. So you stop doing things because you're like, well, I can't do it anyway. And it's not going to make a difference to anything. And that's the can happen part, right? The can do is this internal thing. Yes, I feel that I've got the skills. And if I apply them, I will be able to make a difference. That's the can happen, which is the external thing. So if we put this into your position, it would just be like, well, I can't do it anyway. My vocabulary is terrible. I sound really basic. And, even if I learnt some of the things that you talk about on the podcast anyway, Anna, it's not really going to make a difference. I'm still going to be in the same position as I was before. As I said, this leads you to paralysis and you're just like, well, there's nothing to do because it's not going to make a difference anyway. You may have been in that quadrant at some point in your career with English, but I would say that if you're listening to this podcast right now, likely you're not there because you recognize that actually investing some time in listening to a podcast like this could help you move forward. So I'd argue that you're probably not in that quadrant, but you may find yourself or have found yourself there at some point. And maybe will in the future, life changes, things happen. Confidence isn't necessarily a steady thing. It's not like once you've got it, it stays like that forever. It's a constant accumulation of different tasks, and things can knock your confidence and set you back also as well. Coming back to the bridge then, if it's I can't do it and it can't happen, you're not going to get across the bridge. So you're on the other side and you're staying there. The next quadrant then, and this is one which you may recognize, is can't do it, can happen. So in this scenario, you would listen to the podcast and perhaps maybe you've been following me on LinkedIn and you've seen my posts and you read them and you think, oh yeah, that really resonates with me. And yes, Anna's got a really good point there. The can happen part is there. You feel that if I listen to the podcast and I implement some of the things that are on there and I read the newsletter that Anna sends out every Friday, by the way, if you would like to join that and lots of other professionals, the link is in the description box. This is where I share other tips that I don't talk about on the podcast. It's completely free. You feel that, yes, this could help me get a better career. It could help me improve my visibility in the company or help me feel less anxious. But you have a can't do belief. And this is the other part of the equation, right? That we need to cross the bridge. And this could be, but I just feel like I can't do it. I don't know. I'm not good enough. I've been given some really bad feedback in the past. And I just don't think that I can do it. And this is what leads to feeling anxious. So it's not necessarily a state of paralysis, but it's a state of anxiety. And as we said before, when you're anxious, that holds you back. That stops you doing things. And you might recognize yourself in that part, right? You're anxious, so you don't speak up. You don't go to the meetings. You don't turn on your microphone. You don't say yes to the event. You prefer just to kind of stay quiet and in the background because you're anxious about it. You know that these things would be useful, and if you did them, that it would work, but you just, for whatever reason, don't feel that you can do it. And this actually comes to another concept that he talks about, which is mental backpacks. If we have time, we'll get to that today. If not, it will be in the next episode. So still, we're halfway across the bridge, but you're not going to get fully over it because you've got the can happen, but it's can't do. The other then type of confidence is I can do it, but it can't happen. So this is where you do have the internal belief that, yeah, I can do it. I've got this. It might be a little bit challenging and it's maybe not going to be very easy at the beginning, but I can improve it. And I know that if I put in place a study schedule, for example, that I will get it done. But then the other part of the equation, which is the can happen, isn't quite there. So this would be, yes, I know I can do it, but it won't make a difference anyway because nobody at work at the moment I feel really takes my opinion seriously. Perhaps it could be a mental backpack or a belief that everybody I work with is a native speaker and I don't think that they really trust me or they think that I'm doing a good job. And so this can lead to other feelings, not necessarily anxiety, but yes, it could be that, but frustration, anger. There's an unfairness element to it, right? You might find yourself in that situation now where you know that you could do it. But even if you did it, it doesn't matter anyway, because maybe you're stuck in a position, maybe you've got a really difficult boss or leadership or management structure that you just think, well, even if I did it anyway, it's not going to make much of a difference. And again, we're not over the bridge, right? So we're halfway across, but we're not going to get us fully over there according to these different types of confidence. Now, of course, the ideal fourth quadrant here, because I'm kind of imagining it in a square, is you can do it and it can happen. This would be where you listen to the podcast, you're like, oh, great, yeah, that's really useful. And I'm going to implement that straight away because I know that that's going to help me in my next meeting. And if I do it like that, if I follow maybe some of the frameworks in the podcast before my next meeting, it's going to go better. I think that people are going to understand me better. I think that I'll get better feedback from my clients. So you've got the internal and the external part aligned. I'm thinking about a client right now that I would say absolutely fits into this category. They're like, I can do it. And that doesn't mean to say that they're not faced with challenges and they think that, oh goodness, that sounds like it's going to be a little bit difficult, but I think I can do it. And then also that it's going to make a difference. Like, yeah, actually, if I go to that meeting and I implement some of this stuff, I do think that it's going to go better. And I think that that's going to make an impact on the relationship that I have with my clients. And that's the magic combination that we would like to get to. And perhaps you're there already, in which case, what he would argue there is that that gives you the position to then feel confident and cross that bridge and take action. What I would say, of course, is that remember that confidence is skills-based. So you could be in a different quadrant depending on what it is that you're doing, right? So it could be a general lack of confidence about the language, or it could be something more specific about maybe presentations, right? You're fine with one-to-ones and conversations like that. But, when it comes to presentations, you don't feel as confident. I also think it's important to say here that feeling confident, but then feeling nervous is not the same thing. Confidence, I would say, is an overall feeling about how successful you think you're going to be in a task. Remember that prediction machine. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to be nervous when you get into the meeting, you sit around the table and you've got, 10 senior executives there and they're about to bombard you with questions. You might feel confident, but you're certainly going to likely feel nervous. I guess what I'm trying to say is just because you feel nervous doesn't mean you aren't confident. Does that make sense? And then it comes to, okay, well, what practical steps could you take before a meeting like that to bring you to a calmer state, or as calm a state as possible? Because what research has shown, and this is something that I was trained on in my neurolanguage coaching, is as soon as you have cortisol, which is the stress hormone in the system, that affects your performance. I mean, it's common sense, right? You have that experience yourself. When you're very nervous, you go blank, you get a little bit flustered, things don't flow as well as usual. Well, yes, because your brain is in a different mode. It's like fight and flight. It's like, oh my goodness. It sees it as a threat, as a threatening situation. And when you're in a threat, you operate differently. So the idea is to get you into as calm a state as possible. Like, for example, if I have clients before a session and I can see that they're really stressed, maybe they've just had a very difficult call, or they've got a lot on their mind, and I can sense that. I'm like, okay, well, why don't we just take a couple of minutes just to, warm up, or, how are you feeling today? I sense that you're feeling a little bit stressed. What could we do to get you in the zone for the session today? Because I know that if I can get them into that calmer state and more in the zone, the learning is going to be more effective. Equally, if you have a difficult meeting that's quite high stakes, the question could be, well, how could you get yourself into the zone more or as much as possible to help you perform as well as you can? This actually reminds me of when I give presentations. You may or may not know this about me, but I, since 2024, have been part of a public speaking group. I really enjoy giving presentations for fun. I know it sounds a little bit weird, but I enjoy it. I feel quite confident if I prepare the presentation. I've got my idea. I'm like, yeah, I practice it at home. It's all good, blah, blah, blah. But when I get there and they say, all right, over to you, Anna, I always get that nervous feeling in my stomach. My heart rate starts going and I generally fumble. And a fumble just means like mess up a little bit at the beginning. And one thing I had to try to do, which is really difficult, is take a breath before starting. And this is one of the things they tell or they train you on with presentations is like start clean. I don't really want to use the adjective clean, but it's like start from a blank slate. So take a breath, compose yourself, and then begin. Because when we're very nervous in that moment, you may find this as well in meetings, we have the tendency to just go. I had this with a client recently, actually, who has to hold a lot of meetings throughout a process. And one thing that we discovered together was that she felt like she was kind of that machine gun mode that I've talked about before on the podcast, where it's like, okay, if I just get this finished as quickly as possible, then it's done. But actually that kind of has the opposite effect, because if you're kind of like, okay, let's go. Hi, everyone. How are we doing today? Okay, great. Thanks for being here. Okay, first topic. It's like an attack, or it can come across like that. And if you take the time to just slow it down, even though that's a little bit uncomfortable, it can come across better, more in control. It also gives you a little bit more time to think. So sorry, I went off on a tangent there, but I guess the key point I'm coming back to is you can feel confident, but you can also feel nervous before you do things. Both things can be true. If you feel nervous before something important, that's not necessarily a sign, in my view, that you lack confidence, although there could be a question of, is there something I could do over time to help me feel more confident in this situation? And also, is there a routine that I could build in before I do this type of thing to get me in the zone better? perhaps there's some food for thought for you to go away and think about, because that's what coaching is all about. It's not me telling you what to do. It's suggestions, it's recommendations, but ultimately prompting you, provoking you to go away and think about this yourself. All right, I'm going to wrap it up there today. I hope that was useful, gives you a little bit of perspective on confidence. That's what I wanted to do. Let's understand it. You invest so much time in trying to get it, so let's understand it a bit more. I will pick this up next week, and I think we're going to go into the mental backpack idea that he brings up in this book. So have a great rest of your day, whatever you're doing, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening when you're listening to this, whether you're in Europe, you're in Asia, Africa, Australasia, Oceania, North America, South America, Central America. I've got listeners from all over the place, which is just fascinating. If you want to get more of my tips that I don't share on the podcast, you've got two options. You can follow me on LinkedIn, which I will share the link below. I do post some things on there, and you can also sign up to my weekly newsletter. That's where I share a reflection, a story, a piece of learning that, again, is not on the podcast. You can also go into the description box and sign up there. Thank you so much as always. It was a pleasure to be here with you, and I will see you same time, same place next week. Bye-bye.